Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have a look at the latest on the impending cold spell that will be arriving by the end of this week. As we head into the weekend, it's looking likely very cold air will be moving in from the northeast and will dominate most of next working week, perhaps even longer. Still uncertainty with the exact extent of the cold spell in terms of its longevity, but all models and all ensemble members are now on board for this very cold air to be moving in. It is chilly in the meantime, as we'll see on the live radar and the UKV. It is going to turn fairly dry for the coming days. Still some showers, as you can see at the moment, pushing in from the east, and these are a bit more extensive than we initially anticipated over the last few days. But it will turn slowly drier before we do start to see that cold air move in from the weekend, and the risk of heavy, perhaps wintry showers moving in as well, and maybe even some frontal snow perhaps starting to come into the picture for next week, and we'll start hinting on that as well as we have a look at the longer range charts and the ensembles, and then of course touch on the longevity of this cold spell, whether it will only last until sort of the middle to end of next working week, or perhaps even longer than that as we head through meteorological spring. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. So we'll start on the live radar, and you can see it's a quite unsettled day in places through many areas of the Midlands, Northern England, and even stretching into central Southern England and East Anglia. We're seeing a lot of these widespread moderate to heavy showers breaking out. They do move through very quickly, so we're not expecting any washouts anywhere, but they are a lot more extensive and intense than we anticipated yesterday, than the models were actually predicting. So pepped up slightly, and you could argue it's to do with the increasing sun strength, and that could play into the factors next week when we start to see these showers fall as snow. So that's interesting and something we do need to keep an eye on. But these are continuing to move through the rest of the afternoon into the evening, and should eventually clear away overnight into tomorrow. But when you're under them, the thicker cloud and that stronger gusty wind and the precipitation, it does feel really quite cold out there. The 2 mean temperatures as of around 2:30, you can see blues and yellows dominating, again indicating those temperatures around the mid-single digits, low single digits over higher ground, maybe touching 8 degrees or so. In certain areas we've got a bit more yellows there. And again, if we put on the feel-like temperature, you'll be able to see it is even colder than that when it feels like that with the wind chill. You can see a lot more lighter blues appearing, again indicating those temperatures more down towards freezing in terms of feel-like temperatures. So it does feel very cold out there, even though the thermometer temperatures are still in the mid-single digits. But all of this is going to be shifting even colder next week. The actual temperatures will be a good few degrees colder, and the feel-like temperatures will be a good few degrees cooler as well. So if you think it's cold right now, it's going to get even colder as we head into the weekend and start of next week. So if you do now have a look at the UKV and see what that is showing over the course of the next 5 days or so, you can see those showers heading through at the moment. They're a bit more extensive and intense than initially forecasted here from the UKV. But they should slowly clear away this evening, and by around midnight should be clearing out into the Irish Sea, in most areas should be a bit drier. For tomorrow, it should be generally a dry day, a few showers across the Republic of Ireland, maybe parts of southern Scotland as well, but most areas pretty decent as that colder air does drift away. But even colder air is going to be moving in from the northeast, and you can start to see more showers and cloud moving in. That's that even colder air starting to arrive. You see those wintry showers and general shower activity starting to increase, and you see this weather front approaching as well. That's the dividing line between cold air and the very cold air, the proper polar Arctic air. Now you can see at the moment we've got moderately cold air through many areas of England, around -5 or lower, but as we head into the weekend, you can see that cold air drifting in, -5 to maybe -8, eventually -10 or lower, drifting in from the northeast. That's the really cold Arctic air moving in, and that is what's going to be giving the widespread cold conditions and potentially widespread falling snow as well. The dew points will also be lowering a lot at the moment. They are around the low single digits, freezing in some points, but generally slightly above freezing. That's why most of these showers are falling as rain. But as we head into early next week, the weekend is early next week, you can see widely freezing or below freezing again, meaning these showers will be widely having a wintry flavour to them, if not predominantly falling as snow, even to low-lying areas as well, especially overnight. But even in the day, it can be a few degrees above freezing, but we can still see falling snow. Again, if we put on the 2 meter temperatures, you'll be able to see those temperatures really falling over the coming days. 5 to 8 degrees today, but again, with the wind chill, feeling quite a bit colder than that. Overnight temperatures not dropping away all too much, bar from a few spots, dropping down towards freezing. Many areas actually 3 to 5 degrees, and by tomorrow afternoon, once again, 6 to 9. As we head into Friday, still freezing in some areas in the north and west, maybe in the southwest as well, where we do see clearer skies, but most areas still hovering above freezing. And by Friday afternoon, once again, 5 to 8 degrees. Into the weekend, a widespread frost in northern areas with clearer skies, and then into the afternoon, again 5 to 9 degrees perhaps. And then finally, as we head into Sunday, quite a widespread overnight frost in northern areas, but most other areas still in the low single digits. By Sunday afternoon, not rising much above sort of 5 to 7 degrees, so starting to cool down. We see a more widespread frost appearing there, and even colder air. So yes, it will be turning chillier into the weekend, but nothing much colder than it is now. The real cold air will be arriving into Monday, and generally through the early parts of next week, around the 6th, 7th, 8th of March. That's when we are expecting the coldest temperatures at this stage. This real raw air mass starts to move in. Again, we can't have a look at those precipitation charts in too much detail yet, as it's still sort of 5, 6, 7 days away. But we've had a touch on it here on the UKV, and on the ECMWF later, we will have a look at what that is showing us. It does something very interesting in the mid-range with a bit of a channel low pushing in. So if we do now have a look at the GFS to see what that is producing over the course of the next couple of weeks, now you can see the high pressure moving up towards Greenland and the northeasterly wind arriving. Very cold initially through Monday, Tuesday, and all the way to Wednesday. And then there's a bit of uncertainty as we head toward the end of the week. The GFS hangs on to that cold air, but all of the runs start to try and build some sort of Atlantic influence in. The extent of that Atlantic influence will decide how it breaks down and the timing of any breakdown. Do we just see a clean breakdown here where just milder air pushes back in, or does it struggle a bit more as we see the GM and ECMWF, and that brings the risk of more widespread snow? Here it would be cold and potentially wintry for a good 3, 4, 5 days, but by Friday evening into Saturday we see much milder air and it would go much more westerly. Again, you can see this well emphasised on the air masses. Look at those upper air temperatures, widely -5 by Thursday, but by Friday evening into Saturday, widely much milder air masses pushing in. A pretty clean break there as well, so it would transition very much quickly to rain, so not expecting any sort of snow event there on that breakdown. We need to see that milder air slide to our south as we're going to see that, but instead it just dominates and we go after that more unsettled and milder in from the west. But regardless, still a 4 or 5 day cold spell there with very cold air moving in at least for most areas for, as I said, 3 to 5 days. If we look at the GM, see how that does compare. Again, the high pressure moving up towards Greenland, northeasterly winds moving in, very cold initially, and then eventually as we get toward the end of the week, we do see more of Atlantic influence. But look at this, low pressure sort of developing down the western side in the cold air, and you'd expect to be seeing snow mixing with this. Again, if we look at the precipitation, you can see all this precipitation moving in, and again, it's difficult to say exactly what this would fall as snow, but definitely some snowfall within it. And of course, where we see sort of the -5 line, that's where we're seeing some of the heavier snow as it collides with that milder air, and it's just something we need to keep an eye on. Again, it's well in advance on day 7 to day 10 time frame, so it is very uncertain, but this sort of pattern could produce something more widespread in terms of snow and keep us colder in the longer term. Just looking at this chart though, give it another couple of days, the block to our north and our west is much weaker, so I'd expect these Atlantic systems to move in and introduce milder air, but at least this would give sort of a 6, 7, maybe 8 day colder spell. If you do now have a look at the ECMWF and see how that does compare over the coming days, again, high pressure moving up to our northeast, northwest, northeasterly winds arriving, very cold air moving in. It stays very cold all the way to the end of the week, and then as I said, we see these channel lows developing towards Friday and Saturday. This would give a period of very heavy snow in the far south, still seeing northerly winds colliding in. This is a battleground situation between milder air in the Atlantic and cold air coming in from the north, and you'd expect to see big dividing lines here and potentially some very heavy snow. Again, you can see this well from the temperature deviation, good 10 to maybe 12 degrees below average in the north, a good 4 to 6 degrees above average just to our south. Again, on that dividing line, there would be big weather fronts and snow at its northern edge. Here initially, we do see that snow in the southern counties with that initial channel low, but on the big Atlantic systems, we'll have to see what happens with that. Do they push in like the GFS does, sort of in a delayed time frame, or do they sort of just continue to linger to our southwest and keep us in that very cold air? Now, if we do have a look at those ECMWF chart, let's look at the precipitation on top of it. Now, as you can see, as we head into the weekend, that northeasterly wind comes in. Quite a few showers start pushing in, wintry in nature, but really only start getting properly going through Monday. So it's slightly out of the UKV's time frame at this stage, but we'll have a look at that probably in more detail tomorrow when the UKV does update. We can see plenty of wintry showers, maybe a bit of a weather front moving through initially through Monday into Tuesday. Could give a more persistent area of snow. Again, not expecting anything too major in terms of setting, but this is showing quite a bit of snow there. Again, if it fell overnight, could be covering in places. Elsewhere, got a few showers pushing in, and then eventually, as we head into later of the week, those showers do start to get cut off as the isobars stretch out, but we start to see a weather front moving up from the south, and look what happens. It bumps into that cold air, and we start to see heavy snow breaking out through many areas in the south. Again, we'd be seeing 10 to 15 centimetres of snow in this quite widely. Again, it's difficult to say exactly how much we would see on the ground, because if it fell overnight, it would accumulate readily, but if it fell in the day, there would be a little bit more uncertainty with that, as the temperatures most likely will still probably be above freezing, and the sun strength will melt that snow on its surfaces. So we'll have to see, but this sort of pattern could produce something very wintry towards the end of next week, and we'll just have to see what happens. It is one scenario at this stage. There are multiple different scenarios, but if we did see these weather fronts bump into that cold air, we saw little channel lows developing like this, we could see something very wintry perhaps towards the middle to end of next week. Now, if you finish the video but have a look at the ensembles, the best way to really have a look at all the different scenarios, you can see the latest GFS ensembles all pretty much bang on for at least 3 or 4 days of colder weather. It's milder over the next few days before it does plunge a lot colder towards Saturday to Sunday, and it stays very cold all the way to about Wednesday from all ensemble members. Then we see a bit of uncertainty. Some start to go milder, and those will be the ones that bring in the Atlantic weather fronts. Others, like the GFS, keep it colder all the way perhaps until next weekend before it does bring in the Atlantic systems. So GFS very much on board for a longer, colder spell, but it does break it down very quickly with those upper air temperatures rising by a good 15 degrees or so in the space of about 24 hours. But you can see there is uncertainty within those ensemble members about the longevity. Although inevitably precipitation does increase around that 8th to 15th of March point, when some of the ensemble members and operational runs, as we've seen, still have very cold air in place, and that could mean a lot of that precipitation there could fall as snow. But definitely in the longer range, the majority do trend towards average. So yes, we could see a good 5 to 7 day cold spell, but not looking likely to continue much longer than that at this stage. Things can change. There are some cold ensemble members, but the majority return us to something more around average. Again, look at the dew points, all well below freezing next week, again indicating those temperatures are cold enough, and the air masses is cold enough for widespread falling snow. And you look at the new snow depth, quite a few snow spikes appearing, again indicating a lot of falling snow. The 2 meter temperatures are widely around that sort of 3 to 5 degree point, again indicating it's not freezing cold because it is early March. It's impossible really without something like the beast from the east to be getting ice days because of the increasing daylight hours and the increasing sun strength, but it would still feel bitterly cold out there. The wind chill will make it feel well below freezing. It just will be on the thermometer more like 3 to 5 degrees, and overnight temperatures will be below freezing. It doesn't always get shown up well by the ensembles here. If you compare it to the ECMWF ensemble members, again very similar, but a bit more bullish on the longevity of the colder spell. Many more keeping it cold all the way to the 10th, 11th, or even 12th of March, before most or pretty much all go back towards average or slightly above average. The operational one there keeps us cold all the way to around the 11th or 12th, and from the looks of it, as we saw, would keep it for another couple of days as well. So quite a long cold spell appearing from some of these ensemble members and operational runs. Definitely 3 or 4 days, but could be as much as 7 or 8 from some of the runs. Again, we'll just have to see what happens. And of course, in those latter days, if we do see cold weather prevail, it most likely will come under stress from Atlantic systems, which will introduce moisture and, like the ECMWF showed, snowfall as those low pressure systems bump into that colder air. So we'll have to see what happens next week. For the moment, it's looking cold, potentially very cold, a very cold wind chill out there. Generally cold conditions, at least for this time of year. There will be widespread snow showers as well, as we saw from the ECMWF, but of course we'll have to pinpoint that nearer the time with the high resolution models. And there is the potential, as we head through next week, for seeing some frontal snow or more persistent snow, not only from small little systems, but potentially from big weather fronts and low pressure systems as they approach from the Atlantic and do bump into the cold air. Again, we have no complete answers at this stage, just one of those we're going to have to keep an eye on it over the coming days. So make sure you stay tuned, make sure you're subscribed, and I'll see you again for another video soon.